Hi, everybody. Welcome to English Digest. I'm Stephanie.
I'm Tom.
It's day 2 of our Taiwan unit. We're going to focus our attention on Taiwan and about a guy, a scientist, a very smart scientist, whose name is Lin Zhanghong. He came up with some research that actually proves that Taiwan has its own active volcano. Ooh, sounds pretty ominous. Could be scary.
Could be, but also it might attract tourists from Japan or Korea who want to see an active volcano or something like that. But that's not very comforting to the people who live near Datuanshan. One day you have a nice house up there, and the next day there's this lava flowing across your property, basically making all your pet dogs turn into ash.
Well, if you survive, I guess. I don't think it's very easy to outrun lava when it starts flowing down the mountain.
I can imagine lots of people would go up there and try to take pictures of it and post it on Facebook and stuff. See, I got the lava here. See, there it is.
No,
aren't I wonderful?
Don't do it, guys.
Right before I was devoured by lava and burned at a temperature of 5,000 degrees. So that's not something you want to mess around with. And, of course, people were rightly concerned about Lin's paper when it came out. And so it got into the news. And people started to panic. My goodness, what's going to happen if we have an active volcano? And what if it erupts? How is that going to affect people who live on Yangmingshan, but also people in Taipei who are at the foot of the mountain? That could be really bad for business. So let's find out more about this. Let's read through the entire contents of our lesson, and we'll be right back to discuss it.
The local news picked up on Lin's paper in 2017. The subsequent news reports frightened those living in Yangmingshan's immediate vicinity. The government requested that Lin and his team find out more about the magma chamber. The idea was to get as much information as possible about the signs and risks of a major eruption, so that an adequate emergency warning system could be put in place. In order to get the necessary information, Lin's team deployed 146 seismic stations across northern Taiwan to monitor earthquakes. Within a couple of years, enough data was recorded to be able to understand the scale of the magma chamber. Lin and his team also monitored occasional phreatic activity. Phreatic eruptions occur when constant heat from a magma chamber forces underground gases up through gaps in the rock until they explode through the surface. When phreatic activity is detected, it can be an indication of a volcanic eruption. In 2018, the government and its Central Weather Bureau, CWB, were ready to install the early warning system in cooperation with Lin's team. For this to work effectively, Lin's Taiwan Volcano Observatory had to adopt a system that would monitor seismic activity and that could alert people to an imminent eruption. 40 stations were set up to feed continuous seismic data back to the observatory. While the news of an active volcano on the edge of Taiwan's capital may sound alarming, Lin has estimated that the chance of a magmatic event occurring in the next few decades is around 1%. Ultimately, though, if an eruption were imminent, the CWB early warning system should ensure that there's time to head to safety.
Okay, let's talk about the contents of today's lesson. Remember, back in 2016, Lin Zhanghong published a paper, and that paper suggested that there is a magma chamber underneath Datuanshan on Yangmingshan. And, of course, some scientists in Japan confirmed his results because he checked out those different kinds of waves, which suggested there indeed was a magma chamber underneath Datuanshan. And you can expect that people in Taiwan were kind of surprised to hear this. That does mean maybe disaster is coming. So the local news picked up on Lin's paper the next year in 2017. If you pick up on something, that means you find out about something. And maybe he published this this paper in a scientific journal, and he didn't tell the news media about it, but somebody read it and thought, hey, this sounds kind of alarming. Maybe we should call up a TV station and let them know about this. So the local news reported on this, and the subsequent news reports frightened those living in Yamingshan's immediate vicinity. So you can expect that to have that result here. You can't blame those people for being concerned or frightened if someone says, hey, you're living on an active volcano which might erupt someday and totally destroy everything you own and maybe even kill your entire family.
If you pick up on something, we often use this to talk about animals who sense that their owners are sad or happy. Dogs in particular will pick up on their owners' emotions and their moods. And sometimes they'll come over and try to comfort you if they think you're sad. So you're just aware of something, you're perceptive, or you're perceiving something to be the case. You know about it. So the subsequent or the news reports that followed that, if it's something subsequent to something else, it just means following behind something. In this case, it was just that they picked up on Lynn's paper. The subsequent news reports that they put out there on TV, perhaps, frightened those living in Yangmingshan's immediate vicinity. A vicinity just means that area. If something's in the immediate vicinity, it's pretty close. You can probably walk there, maybe to buy something or go visit a friend. Well, I'm not surprised those that were living in Yangmingshan's immediate vicinity got a little scared after they saw the news reports. And of course, they want you to tune into the news, so they make it sound as scary as possible.
Exactly, to sell advertisements or whatever. So yes, people who live on Yamingshan or nearby Yamingshan, maybe in Tianmu or Shilin or Beitou, places like that, even Jinshan or the North Coast, they would be quite concerned about that. And the government requested that Lin and his team find out more about the magma chamber. So yes, indeed, Dr. Lin here and scientists in Japan said that there's probably a magma chamber underneath Datuanshan. And the government said, well, can you guys find out more about that so we can give people information so they don't need to panic? Or if they do need to panic, then maybe they can make preparations to move someplace else. And the idea was to get as much information as possible about the signs and risks of a major eruption so that an adequate emergency warning system could be put in place. So indeed, if you know there's a volcano there and you know that it's going to erupt someday, you need to be able to look for the clues or the signs or the risks of a major eruption. And of course, that's what a volcano does. It erupts. A bunch of smoke and ash and lava come out of the top of the mountain. Like back in 1980, of course, there was a major eruption in the United States of Mount St. Helens. And that destroyed a lot of forest and killed a lot of people. So yeah, we want to know if a major eruption is coming so that we can make preparations.
I'd forgotten about that. Wow, that was a while ago. Yeah, it can be really scary, especially when it's been behaving for years and suddenly it erupts. I don't think you can ever be truly sure what the percentage or the likelihood of a volcano erupting is because it's nature, and nature does its own thing, as we know. So yeah, they wanted to get as much information as possible, be aware of the signs and the risks, you know, what really is the danger there of having a major eruption. So if a volcano goes off, we say it erupts. And sometimes we use that when we talk about someone who loses their temper and they have a really scary temper. He erupted into rage. And that eruption is the noun form of the verb to erupt or to go off, really to spew. So when a volcano erupts, all of this liquid rock and ash comes out quickly and flows down the mountain. They wanted to have as much info as possible so that they could come up with an adequate emergency warning system and put it in place. Adequate means something that works. Something that works well, it's adequate, it's sufficient. So it's hard to have an emergency warning system, though, For some of these natural events, I know when I get those texts from the government that say something like "Warning, earthquake." I've already been through the earthquake. It came after the earthquake.
Yeah, it's always delayed, isn't it? Yeah, there was a vibration about 10 seconds ago. Good thing you guys told us about it because we had no idea it was coming.
I know.
But yes, indeed, for a major eruption, a volcanic eruption, people want to know ahead of time because they want to figure out where to go and
how to protect themselves.
Etc. Basically, I don't think you can be there. You can't, close your windows or something like that. That's just not going to help.
Oh, no.
And there's going to be ash and smoke in the air as well. So, yeah, you better probably figure you better be someplace totally different from where you are. And we're talking about an adequate emergency warning system being put in place. If something is in place, it's established, it's set up. So that would make people more relaxed if they knew the government had set up some kind of early warning system. Like in the U.S., of course, where I'm from, there are a lot of tornadoes. So they have a warning system put in place.
Does that work?
Well, it kind of is hard to know when those things are going to form, but basically people see it and they can see the conditions. So, yeah, I've never been harmed by a tornado. I've never actually seen one before. But, yeah, they give you warnings and stuff like that tornadoes are coming.
Yeah. Right now, we're going to listen to our Chinese teacher for a few minutes, and then we'll be back to continue.
听众朋友大家好，我是安娜。我们昨天提到大屯火山是不是有可能会爆发，在2017年的时候新闻才注意到林正宏主任的研究论文，那当然之后新闻就爆出来嘛，因为我们知道台北这边真的是住了超多人，很多人在这个阳明山郊区都有房子啊，然后这个密集的很，所以大家都吓坏了。那政府也注意到啦，就要求林主任跟他的团队要调查出更多有关于岩浆库的资讯。那这样子的要求，其实想法就是希望能够尽可能的获得大规模爆发的一种迹象，还有风险的一些资讯。那目的就是为了希望能够有一些紧急预警的系统可以赶快的完成。这就是我们第一段在谈的东西。不过第一段的第4句我们特别注意2个重点。第一个重点在句子前段的地方，请把 as possible 这3个字呢把它抓出来。as possible 就表示尽可能的如何，这个如何有可能是名词、形容词、副词都可以。所以如果你先把 as 框起来， as possible 框起来，在后面的 as possible 把它写上尽可能，那么前面我们看到从2个 s 中间夹到的 much information 是一个名词的概念嘛，很多的资讯，所以句子就会变成说这个概念就是要得到很多的资讯，然后插入 as possible， 尽可能的得到很多的资讯。那目的是为了什么呢？表示目的的连接词同样出现在这句话当中，中间后面有一个 so that， 有没有 so that 也把它框起来，写一个连接词的连，它是表示目的的一个连接词片语。中文通常会翻成以便如何，这样子的话就可以怎样。你看我们中文都有翻成这样子的话就可以，就能够，所以其实在 so that 之后还蛮常出现像 can、could、will、would、do something 这样子的助动词语气。
We're going to take a quick break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Okay, let's continue with our lesson. Remember, Lin Zhenghong came out with a paper in 2016 warning of the possibility of a magma chamber underneath Datuan Mountain, and the government told him to find some more information about that so people wouldn't panic so much. And in order to get the necessary information, Lin's team deployed 146 seismic stations across northern Taiwan to monitor earthquakes. And that's what you do. You have lots of seismic stations with seismometers to read the waves coming from the ground. Remember last time we talked about the different kinds of waves, and there are probably other ways to detect earthquakes and the existence of magma chambers that we can't talk about now because it's just too complicated. But Lin and his team also monitored occasional Phreatic activity. Phreatic, yeah. Which basically has to do with water under the ground and what it's doing there as a result of being heated by geothermic activity. And phreatic eruptions occur when constant heat from a magma chamber forces underground gases up through gaps in the rock until they explode through the surface. They believe that Krakatoa in Indonesia was a phreatic eruption because it involved water building up in a chamber and it exploded like a boiler might explode if it's got too much pressure in the water. And I think Mount St. Helens in is it Washington State or
I think it's Washington
or Oregon? I can't remember, but anyway, they think that was also a phreatic eruption.
Yeah, this is the first time I've ever seen this word phreatic. You can tell I'm not a volcano expert, but yeah. You'll see that phreatic is a word that's used 3 times in that one paragraph. So it's good to know what it means. It has something to do with the steam that comes up from the ground. Is that correct, Tom?
Indeed, yes, and steam, of course, comes from water, so they come up through the rock and explode through the surface.
Boom.
And when phreatic activity is detected, it can be an indication of a volcanic eruption. So again, Dr. Lin is an expert and was looking for phreatic activity, and if they find it, or if they found it, that might tell people that the volcano is going to erupt soon. That's an indication of a volcanic eruption. An indication is just information that tells us something is about to happen. So yes, indeed, if there were an indication, then people would panic for sure, and the volcano might erupt, and it would make international news, and lots of people would die, and it would be a big tragedy.
Oh, but it would help the ratings of these news stations go up. Sometimes I feel like that's all they care about are ratings. So indication, we use this quite often to talk about signs that let us know something is the case, something is happening, something is true. There are indications that someone could be sick if they have pain. So you have to kind of listen to your body if you have those sorts of odd pains every once in a while. And if they continue, it's some sort of sign that something's amiss or something's wrong, so you need to go check it out. So indication. Indicate is the verb form. Indication is the noun form, and it just is a sign, I guess, as I said, that suggests that something is happening or how people are thinking or feeling. I could say Jerry's red face was an indication to me that he was very angry. If someone's face turns red when they're angry, that could let you know you need to perhaps get out of their way. So yeah, this phreatic activity just builds up this pressure underneath the ground. And once pressure gets too strong, then it just blows things up. And that's when the rocks explode and that steam comes through the surface. So in 2018, the government and what we call the CWB here, which is short for Central Weather Bureau, they were ready to install the early warning system they'd come up with in cooperation with Lin's team. So the CWB were working hand in hand or were cooperating with Lin's team to get this early warning system that would actually work.
Yep, so if you want some information regarding the weather or earthquakes or volcanic activity or typhoons, then you can go to the CWB website and get that information. And yes, indeed, the government and the CWB were ready to install the early warning system in cooperation with Lin's team. So they were working together to set up this warning system. And for this to work effectively, Lin's Taiwan Volcano Observatory had to adopt a system that would monitor seismic activity and that could alert people to an imminent eruption. So yes, indeed, we've got Lin Zhenghong and his team is people who are working for him, and they had to work efficiently and effectively to have this system set up that would monitor seismic activity. So I suppose they had seismometers set up in more locations, with the goal being to warn people or to alert them if an eruption was going to happen soon. So here we've got the word imminent, which means it's going to happen soon. And yes, indeed, we don't want to know about this. Hey, there's an imminent eruption coming. You need to make proper preparations because you might be in trouble.
Now, here you notice that they wrote this sentence with imminent coming before eruption, but you could also say they wanted to adopt a system or start using a system that would monitor seismic activity and that could alert people that a volcanic eruption was imminent. You could say it like that too. So 40 stations, 40, were set up to feed continuous seismic data back to the observatory. So it was 24/7 that they were receiving this seismic data so that they could monitor what was going on. That's an important part of knowing whether something's going to happen or not. So moving on to the final paragraph, it says, while the news of an active volcano on the edge of Taiwan's capital, which is Taipei, may sound alarming or scary to you, Lin has estimated that the chance of a magmatic event or something to do with that hot rock, that liquid rock below the surface, having an event like that occurring in the next few decades is around 1%. But as I always like to say, nature has its own will. You know, we can guess what nature is going to do or tell nature what it's going to do. Even think that we can control the climate, but we really can't. Nature is nature. And so you can listen to the scientists, but I would go with your gut feeling. If your gut feeling says, I need to get out of here, or maybe I should move to another place, I would follow that.
Right, but they've done some research based on other eruptions, so they've come up with some percentage at the chance of this volcano erupting, and they've concluded that the chances are only about 1% in the next few decades. So I guess according to his team, you don't really have much to worry about. And indeed, if there is this magma chamber underneath Datuan Mountain, then you might want to be concerned. And yes, indeed, it's alarming, which means kind of scary, something to be concerned about. And indeed, the news may be alarming that the crime wave is going up or whatever, so that might be alarming to you. It might be scary for you. But again, a magmatic event might occur maybe in the next few decades, but there's only a 1% chance of that happening. So remember, magma is liquid rock,
right.
So the adjective form here is magmatic. And yes, both Stephanie and myself probably have only seen this word once in our lives within the last minute or so, because this is just not a common word unless you are a volcanologist or somebody who studies volcanoes.
A volcanologist sounds like somebody from Star Trek, Tom.
Yeah, Vulcan and volcanic, they sound like similar words.
Yeah, like Spock. Anyway, that's some of the latest scientific information on volcanoes here in Taiwan. I think it's really interesting. So you might want to just keep your eye peeled for something like that in the future. But I think it's time, it's just about time to listen to our Chinese teacher one more time, and then we'll be back to say goodbye.
林正宏主任的团队呢，因为要获取那个必要的一些资讯嘛，当时就在北台湾设置了146个地震的观测站来监控地震哦。在这过去几年之内，就记录了很多可以了解大屯山底下这个 magma chamber， 也就是岩浆库的一些规模的数据。那当然也监控了一些蒸汽活动了。这个蒸汽活动在火山爆发也是很重要的东西。我们来看一下第2段第3句最后面，我们看到了一个蒸汽活动 phreatic activity 这2个关键字。好，因为我们要提到这个火山爆发的时候，它之前会有蒸汽活动。为什么会有蒸汽活动呢？同样在第2段第4句就说明了解释。因为如果是岩浆库啊 magma chamber 持续不断有高温，就会让地下的这个气体通过岩石当中的缝隙往上移动，直到它们冲破地表之前，这些状况然后喷发上去之后， 所谓的蒸汽喷发就是我们所谓的蒸汽活动。好，我们同样也要看一下第二段第4句这里。首先有2个表示时间的连接词，第一个是 when， 我们把它抓出来。第二个呢，则是在第二段第4句比较后面的地方有一个 until。请注意 when 跟 until 中间有没有看到一个 forces， 就是 force 这个字。这个字我们的认知好像本来是名词嘛，就是魄力啊、迫使啊，其实它也可以当动词哦，在这里就是一个动词的用法。那这样子的一个 constant heat from a magma chamber， 岩浆的持续的热 forces 动词就会迫使 underground gases up through gaps in the rock， 就会迫使这些地底的气体往上冲，冲破了岩石当中的 gaps 缝隙，一直冲到什么时候才停止呢？ Until 指的是这个时间之前的状况，直到 explode 整个喷发之前，他们都一直不断的往上冲，那冲破了之后就成为所谓的蒸汽活动嘛。所以接下来到2018年的时候，政府的中央气象局啊，就跟林正宏的这个团队呢，这个主任的团队又继续在合作，就准备要安装一个预警系统 warning system。而且为了要让系统有效的运作，主任这个大屯观测站啊，就必须要采用一套可以监测地震活动，而且可以向大家警示即将火山喷发的一个系统哦。我们来看一下第3段第2句这个地方，我们先看一下 a system， 抓出来，它其实后面带了很长的限定用法的关系子句，而且是2个哦。好，先行词 a system，我们先把它画出来，后面的 that 一直到全部句尾的地方左右括号。那我们刚刚说它带了2个限定用法关系子句，第一个是从 that would 一直到 and 这个之前， that would monitor seismic activity。 好，第二个关系子句 and that could alert people blah blah blah， 这是2个限定用法关系子句。所以就有40座的观测台就设置好了，就一直不断的会把这个地震的这个一些数据啊传回观测站。所以其实我们在好几年前听到大屯火山可能会爆发这个消息，真的是大家都吓坏了哦。但是虽然是很令人害怕啦，可是其实啊，主任他们这是预估啊，未来几十年爆发这种所谓的火山的事件几率大概只有 1% 啦，所以也不要这么样的这个担心。最后到了第4段的第1句，首先这里的 while， 当然我们一开始直觉是 when 的意思，但是不要忘记哦， while 这个连接词还有 although 虽然之意，根据上下文来推断，一定是表让步的。虽然很吓人，但是不要担心，几率大概只有 1%。 所以最终火山如果要喷发的话，我们现在这个预警系统啊，其实都可以确保会有足够时间让我们移动到安全的地带。同样这一段第2句最后面看到 ensure 之后的 that 到句尾，请把这里用中括号，它是一个名词子句哦，它是 ensure 确保一件事情的所谓的那件事情的是受词，它不是关系子句。我们再说一次，ensure 因为是及物动词，要确保，所以它后面加的是受词一件事，也就是说从 that 到句尾它是名词子句，它也是完整子句作为 ensure 的受词。所以安啦，不要这么担心，火山应该不至于会爆发啦。我是安娜，我们下次见。
That is it for today. Thank you for joining us, and please join us again next time for another edition of our program. And don't worry, we'll still be here. There's not going to be a volcanic eruption between now and the time of our next program.
We hope not.
We hope not. And from all of us here at English Digest, I'm Tom.
I'm Stephanie.
Goodbye.
Bye.